welcome to Crooked Letter Sports Podcast, the show about Mississippi sports and the folks who play them. I am Tyler Cleveland, joined this week via Zoom with Rick Cleveland, our co-host, who is on location just outside of Cashiers, North Carolina. Am I saying that right? Cashers. Got it.
It's spelled Cashiers.
Rick is on a bit of an end of the summer odyssey, jetted over to Atlanta this past weekend and now up to North Carolina to visit our old friend Rusty Hampton, former Clarion Ledger sports editor and longtime sports journalist, who is kind enough to put Rick up since he's should be in the poorhouse. Anyway, Dad, we got a good show for our guests today. Some sad news with the passing of Ryne Sandberg, who he retired when I was like 11. But I remember when I was young, the Cubs having a badass, infielder who could hit.
Yeah, they were good, and he was the reason they turned around. You know, they were bad for a whole long time, but I do remember when you were little, sitting in the living room watching WGN TV and me telling you that be sure to watch this second baseman. He's pretty good.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing him get fooled by Greg Maddux, which happened to so many. But what a fantastic player, and it's kind of like, as we were talking about a little bit off air, he's one of those guys from like a time and place that doesn't exist anymore. An infielder who can do he could lay down bunts. He hits behind the runner. I mean, just a ball player. Wasn't trying to hit 50 home runs with 200 strikeouts a season.
Yeah, and he looked like a Hollywood movie star. A really good-looking guy. He was the face of Chicago for a while. You were talking about Greg Maddux fooling him. Well, Greg Maddux fooled a lot of people, but at one time they were teammates.
That's right.
Yeah, they were teammates with the Cubs, and boy, they were good. They had, remember when? Well, you probably don't remember, but Ron Say came over from the Dodgers, and well, they had a heck of a team. Plus, they had Harry Carey behind the microphone.
Never hurts.
No, doesn't hurt at all. So,
well, they don't make him.
He was a great player, and 65 years old.
That's crazy. It's crazy. I mean, I'm sure that, playing for that long takes some kind of toll on your body, but 65 seems too young, especially for somebody who was such a paragon of health there. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. He was special. Tyler, I wanted to mention that part of the reason for this trip, we stopped by in Atlanta for a memorial service for one of my best old buddies in sports writing, Jack Wilkinson, who longtime terrific writer for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and before that, the New York Daily News. And they had the memorial service at Manuel's Tavern. And it was, I'm telling you, that back room where you've been before, it has seating for about 100 people, and there were about 300 people crammed in there. It was amazing service. It reminded me a lot of your Uncle Bobby's service.
Well,
it was really cool.
Well, I know that's a fitting tribute to Jack, and not the first time you've been in a big crowd at Manuel's either.
No, a little bit different scene.
Were you able to get your hands on some wings anyway?
I did not. I did not eat the wings.
But you did get your hands on a cold beer.
There was lots of that going around. Yeah.
Good. Yeah. I'm glad to hear it. Well, Dad, we got a couple of topics to get to, and I'm hoping you can rope Rusty in here for a couple of minutes so we're
going to rope him in here in a few minutes.
We can talk about some more old newspaper times. Dad, the first thing I want to talk about today is Konnor Griffin. I know he's a topic so often discussed on the show, but I saw the rankings updated, and he is now officially the number one prospect in all of baseball.
Yeah, to no surprise on our part.
Right.
I mean, we've said all along he's got everything. I don't know what more you could want in a prospect. He can hit, he can throw, he can field any position. He hits for power. He's stolen what, 46 bases already?
Yeah, I mean, I know this list is put together by by scouts, but I guess my question would be, what causes the meter to rise and fall on a guy like, we already knew he was talented and has a bright future. You know, is it his production that has changed their perspective?
Well, two things have happened. You know, his production. He's hitting over 300. He's knocking in runs. His exit velocity is higher than most major league stars. He's doing everything. But the other thing that happens is that other prospects get promoted to the big leagues. So every time that happens, he moves up the ladder, and he just moved up from number 2 to number 1 because the number 1 got promoted.
I see. Well, that makes sense. Does this change anything for him, you think? I mean, I don't know if it makes a big difference what they think of him. I mean, you know, I'm sure I think the concern would be that it would add pressure, you know, but I just don't see it affecting him. Well, let's hope not. We're still.
I know there's some concern on his dad's part, and I know his dad listens to our podcast a lot, and I understand why there would be a concern about the added pressure of being the number 1 prospect in baseball at age 19. You know, I can understand that, but he has shown no signs that anything like that's going to affect him.
Yeah, I think one of his intangibles is just the adapt. I mean, you know, he seems to adapt to whatever situation they put him in. You know, he, you know, hit well, pitch well at Jackson Prep. And, you know, they move him to the low A or rookie ball, and he does well there. They move him to low A, he does well there. He move him to high A, he does okay. You know.
Yeah, he's just. I think it's time. I wouldn't be surprised to see him move to Double A here pretty quick.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty exciting. The other bit of news I wanted to get to before we bring Rusty in was the SEC football preseason poll came out. And I guess this is a media poll. I'm very interested to see what you think about it. They got Ole Miss finishing middle of the pack, 7th out of 14 teams in the SEC. And they have the prognosticators have Mississippi State finishing last. Interested to hear your take on that. And then, you know, I guess I don't think either one of them had a first-team all-conference selection, and I don't remember that.
I was a little surprised at that. I thought the Ole Miss linebacker would probably be a first-team all-SEC, but, you know, Alabama, LSU, Georgia, they all got them, Tennessee. Yeah. And I thought that Ole Miss might be ranked a little bit low, and then I looked at who they're ranked above.
Yeah, some good teams in that group.
Yeah, they're 7th, but they're ranked above Tennessee, Oklahoma. I mean, that league is just freaking stupid.
It is.
It's just unbelievable. I mean, and I fully did expect Mississippi State to be ranked last, but that's happened so many times in the past when they haven't finished last, you know. So,
well, you just feel like if their defense is even like just terrible, they'll be a step ahead of where they were last year. You know what I mean? Like, they're not going to be, if they're not historically bad, then they should be, you know, because I think they're going to be pretty decent on offense. I don't know that, you know, I think Lebby will get them going on that side of the ball, but the defense that was so bad last year, if they're just like marginally improved, then they shouldn't finish dead last.
Right. But then you look at the SEC and who they got to play, and you say, well, who are we going to beat? I'm waiting for your answer.
You're not going to get one. I'm not sure. You know, I mean, it's you said, like you said, it's tough sledding out there.
It's really, really tough.
My answer would be somebody, surely.
Yeah. Well, there's a guy sitting right next to me who knows all about it, who covered it with me at the Clarion Ledger for, Jesus, how many years were you there, Rusty?
25 years total.
25 years. That would be a lot if he wasn't sitting next to a guy who was there for 35 years.
I was there for 14 years as a reporter, and then 11 years as the sports editor. I left for 4 years and worked in Louisville, Kentucky for 4 years with the Louisville newspaper.
Yeah, the Courier Journal. Believe it or not, Rusty, I am such a professional podcaster at this point that I actually have your resume in front of me. You were at the Ledger from August 84 to August 98, 14 years, and then again from 2002 to 2013, where you were the sports editor. And I'm sure that I have never complimented you on this before, but you made some incredible hires during that time, and we had some great talent come through Jackson. So we'll get your laurels in right off the bat.
Rusty was, without question, the hardest working sports editor I ever worked with. He was,
thank you.
Did a great job. He made the stories he touched better, and he made us better. Boy, we were good too there for a while.
We had a good product for that stretch from the I got to the Clarion Ledger at 84 from soon after that, the late 80s, all the way through, 2010. When you were there through 2011, Rick?
Yeah, I was there from August 79 till spring of 2011.
And, that was the heyday of newspapers, and before the internet had kind of taken over, and newspapers around the country had money and traveled and covered events and covered events well. I mean, we did things like when they played the Egg Bowl on a Friday night a couple times, or Friday afternoon, and then they had high school football championships on Friday night. We'd have two sports sections in Saturday's paper. We'd have an Egg Bowl section and a regular sports section filled with high schools. I mean, we had 20, 25, 24 pages of sports on a Saturday that we all did in a couple hours, got it done and wrote stories, edited stories. It was a fun time.
Everybody remembers Bobby Cleveland as the outdoors editor, but he was also the guy that put together that Sunday behemoth of a.
Yes, he did that for many years. But then even when he wasn't in charge of the Sunday section, he worked Saturday nights during football season and was the best headline writer. I've told people that he was our best copy editor, the best headline writer, caught the most mistakes, he could make copy better. And people, you're right, Rick, people didn't realize that, yes, he was a good outdoors writer and he was funny and he knew what he was doing, but he was a good newspaper person, And there's something to be said for that. There's something to be said for those guys who sit inside at night, writing headlines, editing copy, making the copy better. So
yeah, and Rusty, something Tyler brought up was about the talent that came through there, and you hired a lot of them. I mean, people that have gone, well,
Well, some of the people we hired that we hired when I was sports editor, Ian Rappaport, who's now still with NFL Network. Michael Wallace, who went on to work for ESPN, and I think he's now working for Grizzlies, covering the Grizzlies in Memphis. Hugh, who's now working for Athletic.
Hugh Kellenberger.
Hugh Kellenberger, who's with the Athletic. David Brandt, who we hired to cover, I think, Jackson State to begin, and then Ole Miss, and now David's covering Major League Baseball and NFL for the AP in Phoenix.
Well,
what a job!
Yeah, he's a national baseball writer.
Yeah, so
he's done really well.
Well, I just want you to know, and I was brushing up on this, and this is the part that got me. Rusty, when you were from May 2002 to May 2013, you managed a sports department at the Clarion Ledger that had 18 full-time employees and 12 to 15 part-time employees.
And actually, the part-time at sometimes was more like 20-some.
Yeah,
those were the people, the high school sports staff that came in and took high school scores. And I didn't directly manage that crew. I was the manager of the person who managed that crew, but that was a very important part of the newspaper before the internet became the way to report that kind of stuff. I mean, it's incredible the high school football, basketball, baseball statistics or game scores, box scores that we could gather in a few hours on a Friday night during high school football season at the newspaper when it was going like that was amazing. 20 people in there, 15 people in there answering phones, recording scores. And then a couple hours later, the press runs, and there it is. And people get it at their doorstep Saturday morning.
Well, I tell people the story all the time. So when I was a senior at Northwest Rankin in 2004, I decided I wanted to put together a book on Northwest Rankin baseball for my senior project. And I remember coming down to the office, and Van Dyess was in there, and Van had every box score from every Northwest Rankin baseball game that had ever been played. And I went through all of them and put together like a season by season with the opponents and the results and the winning pitcher, and put together like team leaders and batting averages and stuff like that. It was incredible. And I mean, that stuff it just doesn't exist. And I don't know what the hell happened to it, where it went. It was incredible the amount of information that you had.
There's no landing spot for all that now. That was the Clarion Ledger.
Yeah.
So I guess the next question is, Rusty, how you enjoying retirement? I guess are you still working for Neil Schaefer?
I am. I wanted to say that. I left the newspaper in 2013, but I didn't retire. I work in the marketing department for Neil Schaefer Engineering. It's a Jackson-based engineering firm. And I just wanted to give a shout out to them because it's been a great place to work, great company, great people, and it was really good for me. I did 33 years in the newspaper business and had gotten a little bit burned out. I was a lot burned out, to be honest, on it. And this was a great change. And I'm still working for Neil Schaefer. We're up here in North Carolina, and I've actually been working remote for a few days. Took today off because Rick and Liz are visiting. And then I'll take next week off and do some hiking and, some fun stuff. And then I'll be back in Jackson after that. But I'll be working for a couple more years at least there. But it's I just want to, give them their due, because it's a very good place to work.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for somebody who needs to transition to a marketing department near you?
Sure. I could help you out. I could tell you, it's a little bit different world than newspapers, but
good.
But you still write and you still edit. I still do a lot of writing and editing. Just in a different way.
I'm sure you would miss it if you didn't. And I'll just say, on a personal note, you always made everything I sent you better. Even if the first call was to reject it because I had written too much about softball. I remember when we would put together those, because every day we had a roundup from Southern Miss, Ole Miss, and Mississippi State. And when I was at the American, we would handle the USM one. And there's like a couple of days a week where I would do it. And, some days it's just slow news, and I would send a bunch of stuff about Southern Miss's second team all conference volleyball, setter. And Rusty would come back and, he'd say, I really appreciate this note and everything, but this could have been a graph. I need give me something from football. You always made what I did better, and I think almost to a man, everyone who worked for you would say the same. So we miss you down here, and hope everything's going well.
It is.
Tyler, Rusty and I covered a whole bunch of ground together. I was going to ask Rusty, what of all the things that you covered while you were in two different stints at the Clarion Ledger, do you have any most memorable?
Well, some of the biggest things were the biggest events. I was the Mississippi State beat writer when they went to the Final Four in 1996, that 95-96 season. And so that has to stand out. The only time a Mississippi school has done that. And plus that team was so dynamic, but you have to be dynamic to get to the Final Four. That's what gets you there. You have to have an NBA player or two. And they had Eric Dampier, who played how many years in the NBA?
14.
And Dante Jones, who could have played. He was drafted. He could have played. He had the talent. He had fragile feet. Would he break his foot or ankle?
He had foot injuries, and he never really adapted to defense.
Yeah. But they were a dynamic team and fun, and they went on a run, and I got to chronicle that. I covered Mississippi State's baseball team, I think, at least 4, if not 5 trips to the College World Series. Those were always fun. I was there at Duty Noble Field when Burke Masters hit his home run. That's the home run, one of the biggest in Mississippi State history, when they beat Florida State in that regional. The Egg Bowl, I can't remember the year. Was it 92? The Stand when Ole Miss, I was covering Ole Miss then, and they turned back State 11 times inside the 10-yard line. I was
standing right in that end zone,
spitting a little bit of snow. It was cold. It was perfect football weather, and just a great game. I covered the Mississippi State Ole Miss basketball game at Starkville, and again the years really escaped me, but when they played 4 overtimes, what a game. And Cameron Burns from Mississippi State hit 2 free throws with no time on the clock to extend the game, and he was barely a 50% free throw shooter.
What I'll always remember about that game is that Ed Murphy, the benches, you had the scorers table in the middle and then the benches on either side, and Murphy walked over to Richard Williams and said, he's going to make these free throws. and he was like a 55% shooter.
Yeah, and he made them.
And he made them both, and then State won. State won, yeah.
4 overtimes, though. You don't see that very often. I mean, that's a whole extra half.
And if you're a sports writer, you don't want to see it very often.
Well, no, but it was fun. You don't want to because of deadlines, but back then when we had those really tight newspaper deadlines, but it's still fun to cover events like that. Now when I left the Clarion Ledger and went to the Courier-Journal, Rick and I were discussing this earlier today. I told him the most exciting event I ever covered up close and personal was the 2000 PGA Championship at Valhalla, which is in Louisville. And that was when Tiger Woods and Bob May went head-to-head in the final round, back and forth, and making birdie after birdie. And Bob May, nobody had ever heard of, and Tiger was in the midst of the Tiger Slam and just had, really burst on the scene and become the guy. And I was, the lead writer for the Courier-Journal on that. And so I had an inside the ropes pass and was walking with them and just there for every shot. It was so exciting, so loud, just really neat, really lots of drama. So there's some kind of fun stuff like that I got to do as a sports writer too.
So you're saying that was a little bit better than the Viking Classic in July at Annandale?
Yeah, I do remember the first Deposit Guarantee Classic at Annandale in July when it about the apocalypse hit with all the thunder and lightning and wind. We thought we had a tornado in the middle of July in Jackson, blew all the merchandise tents and all the tents all over the place. The course flooded. I remember that.
Scared me to death.
Yeah, lightning hitting everywhere for about 2 hours, and they're like, "Welcome to Annandale." First first year.
They only thought they had left the floods behind in Hattiesburg.
But I did enjoy covering that golf tournament. I still enjoy going to it at Country Club of Jackson. It's just fun to get out there and watch those guys play. They're really good, and it's just a lot of fun. And covering it and getting to interview them and talk to the players and try to get some of their mindset. Tyler, you've covered that tournament. I mean,
it's a blast.
It's fun. If you like golf, it's fun.
I really appreciate you guys. I know, Dad, on your odyssey through, I guess that what part of the country would you call that? The southern east coast.
Southeast.
I don't know what you call that.
Southeast.
The southeast. He's on a trek across the southeast over the next week or so, and we appreciate Rusty. Thanks for putting him up. And we appreciate you joining us this morning. Guys, where are you headed next, Rick?
Headed over to the Asheville area tomorrow. Actually going to be in Flat Rock, North Carolina.
Yep. What's the temperature where you are this morning?
It was 63 when we walked outside.
63 when we went out for a walk about 8. Here at our cabin, it'll get 75 to 80, max 80. It won't get any more than that. It might just 75. And it's fairly humid, but not as humid as, like Jackson or Atlanta. We're walking to some waterfalls today, and the temp will drop about 10 to 15 degrees when we get to those waterfalls. It'll be almost cold at these big, huge waterfalls. So
eat your heart out.
Yeah. And our listeners can't see it, but I am just slapping my forehead over here. That's ridiculous. Well, y'all enjoy the weather, and we'll see you next week. Everyone, thanks for tuning in. Be sure to keep up with all of Rick's latest writings over at MississippiToday.org, and we'll talk to you next week.